Gamer is reporting that PS3, Vita, and PSP stores will be permanently closed in a few months. The article reads, according to a source familiar with the situation, the stores are due to be closed down from July. The announcement is planned for the end of this month. PSPs and PS3 stores are to be closed on July 2nd, while the PS Vita store will stay open until August 27th. After those dates, you'll no longer be able to purchase digital copies of games or DLC for any of the Sony consoles mentioned above. As Sony has not made a statement yet, it's unknown whether existing owners, and I use that term lightly now, but basically if you purchase the game on the console, it's unknown as of now whether you will be able to re-download the game, its DLC, or any patches of the game. So currently my advice would be to go back and download what you need in the event that downloads won't be possible. In the past, patches of games have been made available to gamers despite games being removed on storefronts, so it's still possible that your first print copy of Uncharted 3 that has wonky aiming physics will be able to download a patch that fixes it. But if Sony completely shuts down PSN connection to these consoles, this could be a different story entirely. In the past, Sony PlayStation boss Jim Ryan has commented on his lack of enthusiasm for nostalgia. In 2017, he said, "When we've dabbled with backwards compatibility, I can say it is one of those features that is much requested, but not actually used much," said Ryan. That, and I was at a Gran Turismo event recently where they had PS1, PS2, PS3, and PS4 games, and the PS1 and the PS2 games, they looked ancient. Like, why would anyone play this? For Sony, the argument against backwards compatibility mostly lies with looking at numbers in a spreadsheet, but I'd argue they literally have backwards compatibility backwards in a number of ways. First, let's try to understand Sony's motives on looking ahead rather than on the past. In some ways, this is a pretty straightforward decision. Sony makes AAA games and they sell the greatest number of copies at its release when its marketing and groundswell of hype is the greatest. After which point they peter out and Sony has to start discounting its price to move more copies. At some point it's fair to say that it's not worth Sony supporting older titles because they're not worth the resources in support of the product. Another reason, though less financial, would be that tastes and trends change over time. Oftentimes we do look back at past eras and wonder what people in that era were thinking. Just look at how fashion and entertainment have evolved. By removing the availability of old games on its PSN network, Sony can manage its nostalgia more effectively by showing the most hype 30-second sizzle reel of old games, rather than making the games available where current gamers may have false expectations, especially when they don't stand up to current day standards or tastes. This is pretty much in direct contradiction to how Microsoft and partly Nintendo have embraced backwards compatibility and nostalgia. Microsoft have embraced backwards compatibility, and their latest consoles being able to play backwards compatible original Xbox and Xbox 360 games at higher resolutions and frame rates, and also making them available on the Xbox Store for purchase. It definitely leans more towards how Steam on PC operates, and that games will live for as long as the Steam service is up. Nintendo also understands the role of nostalgia for gamers, that part of the reason Mario and his friends are as popular as they are is that its games stay true to the characters but also refreshed for the current moment in time. It also understands its history, although mostly when it does release older titles, these have tended to be curated in either the Virtual Console store or released as a mini console. And while it can be argued that these nostalgia products can be overpriced, well, at least it is available. For the PS3, PSP, and Vita stores, these were the first PlayStation digital stores, in a time when console stores were relatively new and most consumers weren't really sure what the terms and conditions were. Does anyone actually read what these terms are? Would people have known back then that in 15 years the store would cease and the game you basically rented for 15 years would no longer be available? What about people who bought hundreds of games thinking it would be made available in perpetuity in one form or another like a physical disc, particularly when it was the same price as a physical? I can understand the argument that tastes change over time and what was once popular is no longer popular now. But if it was just a matter of keeping some servers up so that existing owners of these games could at least download them, as a multi-billion-dollar company with various sources of income, this should be very achievable for Sony. As I said earlier, Sony, at least to me, appears to have backwards compatibility backwards, and that's because they seem to put very little value in products that have aged while embracing the current moment of gaming. But when you look through the annals of history, as a people we have always embraced the past, because it's a moment that is priceless. That's why photos and memories are priceless. Why we take photos on our smartphones to capture that moment. Why historical artifacts in museums are valuable and studied, because it tells us something about that moment in history. Why we remember stories of when we gamed as children and beat that final boss in Final Fantasy. It's why basketball cards from 50 years ago are valuable, or that Lego set is 10 times what it cost at the time. That moment in time is valuable to many people. In fact, these PS1, PS2, PS3, PSP, and Vita games shouldn't be devalued over time as Sony has it, rather they should increase in value as the physical discs rightfully have on the secondary market. In my opinion, I don't see why Sony couldn't have a digital store that had all its titles made available. And if they really wanted to, they could even increase the price of the game, though I honestly hope they don't. Would you pay $100 for an official version of Gran Turismo 1 on the digital store? I'm sure some people would at least like it easily available. In a way, it's a bit like a garage sale and throwing away all your old toys. There's a moment of reflecting on the memory and whether it should be put up for sale. And how many people have sold off games thinking they could do with the money, only to wish they had never sold it in the first place. Sometimes it's not just about the game itself, but it's also about the end user. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button, also subscribe to the channel for more gaming news and analysis, and I'll see you in the next one.